What's going on, guys? Welcome back. It's the 2025 Hungarian Grand Prix predictions. How's it going, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. We're here to make our predictions for what's going to happen this week in Hungary. It's the final race before the summer break. Even though we did just have a 3-week break, we're doing another one for a month this time. So let's enjoy the weekend to the extent that we can and hope we get an exciting race. Today, we're going to be making our predictions for our biggest positive surprise, our biggest disappointments, our qualifying top 3, our race podium, and then as always, we'll wrap things up with our one crazy prediction. Let's go ahead, without further ado, no beating around the bush this week. Let's head in to our biggest positive surprise. Kicking things off with our biggest positive surprise, and I don't think I'm going to be alone this weekend in picking Kimi Antonelli as my biggest positive surprise for the Hungarian Grand Prix. It feels like it's been forever since we've seen a really solid weekend from Kimi, and I think I saw a stat that said since his podium in Canada or somewhere around then, he hasn't even finished in the points since then. And so I think it's about time we see Kimi get back into the points at least this weekend, because I really think Kimi has what it takes to perform very well in F1. I think we're finally just seeing him hit the rookie wall a little bit harder than many of us expected him to, and it's just going to be one of those weekends where I think Kimi finally gets it back in. Summer break looming, hopefully frees him up a little bit mentally. Hungary, I know, isn't exactly the most perfect situation track to try and get back on track in terms of performance, but at the same time, it's the type of track where you really have to get into a groove, and if you're able to do that, I think good things will happen for Kimi. So I think it could be a very good opportunity for him to take a little bit of momentum into the summer break, try and recoup and regroup himself for the second half of the 2025 season. And I think, unlike what we saw in Spa, where we saw him making multiple mistakes and definitely not looking as confident as I think we might have seen him when he was finishing on the podium in Canada, or scoring consistent P5s, P6s on the grid, being right there with George thereabouts. He's really been struggling, a lot of mistakes. I think it all kind of culminated in Spa. So I think I'm a big Kimi believer. I don't think Mercedes make a big mistake in signing Kimi to this year, even though it looks like now that we're definitely seeing how young Kimi is and how inexperienced he really is to try and pull himself out of this rut. But at the same time, I think he has all the tools around him to do so. So I think we're going to see a big weekend from Kimi, scoring some really good points and finally getting off the snide just a little bit before the summer break. Let's move on now to biggest disappointment, and my pick for biggest disappointment this week is a driver who has not necessarily been lighting up the points sheets, lighting up in great, fantastic results, but definitely has seen an upturn here over the last handful of races himself, and that is Liam Lawson. Now, I do think the RB is one of the better, right deep in the midfield battle, and I think we're seeing, obviously, Liam perform very well. We've sort of seen him switch with Isaac, who at the beginning of the season was putting in these really, really great results, consistently scoring points. Now he's really struggling, but now Liam is consistently scoring points, and Isaac is really struggling. I think it's only a matter of time before we see Isaac take another step forward, and I think we could see a bit of a leveling out situation with RB, especially at a track like Hungary. It's one of those circuits that really you have to be on it from the jump, and while we've seen Liam perform very, very well, I think it's one of those weekends where I think we might see a bit of a return to the mean in terms of his race performances. And I think we've also seen some teams definitely struggle to put in good performances that could, if they're able to, get back to where they were running, not but a handful of races ago, that really could push Liam. And unfortunately, I think he'll finish this weekend outside the points pretty decently, and not necessarily a bad weekend for sure, but I think he's had a very good run of form, and I think it could see a pretty decent step back this weekend. So who knows? What do you think? Let me know down in the comment section below. Before we move on to our qualifying top 3, if you made it this far into the video, leave a like rating on it, because it'll really help me out as we continue to try and grow this small little community we are here on the channel, as well as subscribe if you haven't already. We'd love to have you join us. And as always, leave your predictions for what's going to happen this weekend in Hungary down in the comment section below. All right, let's move on to qualifying top 3. Hungary has turned into one of those tracks for me where qualifying is actually really exciting. It's one of those very technical tracks, and it really just is about getting into a groove and really hitting your marks on each and every corner, because they come so fast and very quickly after another. And I think it really stems from my time of driving it in the sim, which I understand is not at all like driving it in real life, obviously. But at the same time, it used to be, when I first started watching F1, not one of my interested tracks at all. But now I really look at it and have a lot of respect for the people who are able to put in very consistent, positive, fantastic results. And so this is definitely one of the more interesting, intriguing tracks on the calendar for me. It's kind of like the same end of the spectrum as like Spa last week. Spa, I said it a lot last week, one of my favorite tracks in the entire world. Hungary, not one of my favorite tracks, but it's definitely one of the tracks I look at the most and say, if you're able to perform really well there consistently, I think that actually speaks very highly of your skill and consistency as a driver. And so I'm always fascinated to see this. Qualifying is nothing if not being able to put in the lap when it matters most, and I think it's going to be one of those fun qualifying sessions that we see in F1, because as we know, qualifying is basically the most important part of the weekend at this point in the regulations, and so I think it's going to be a lot of fun, as it always is. But without further ado, let's begin. My pick for P3 in qualifying this weekend is in fact Max Verstappen. I think Max does very, very well around Hungary. I think he is starting to settle in. I think we saw a very solid result last time out in Spa. We saw him perform pretty decently with a higher downforce setup as well as a lower downforce setup. So Max is always going to be right abouts there, and it's just one of those things where every once in a while he's just going to put in a very, very, very good performance. Unfortunately, it's just at this point, unless something drastic happens, P3 is about mostly what everyone else can hope for, because there is a certain car on the grid that is just by far and away faster than everyone else. So I don't necessarily know if the gaps to qualifying are going to be as wide as they have been in weeks past, just because Hungary is a relatively shorter lap. But at the same time, I think P3 is going to be about the highest Max could go, unless we see just one of those absolutely just pinpoint accurate, all-time highlight reel qualifying laps for Max, which we know he's capable of putting in, but this weekend, I just don't see it with the McLaren on the grid. Not to name drop too hard, because my pick for P2 this time out in qualifying is Lando Norris. Obviously, the McLaren puts him in a very good position. We know Lando is very, very quick over a single lap, and I think it's going to be another one of those weekends like we saw last year, where the McLaren looked very, very strong from start to finish, and I think it's going to finish that way once again. It'll be a front row start for Lando Norris, and he'll be starting alongside my pick for pole position in Hungary, Oscar Piastri, coming back to the site of one of the more interesting finishes to a Grand Prix I've seen in recent memory. Obviously, with the drama that McLaren put themselves in with their strategy decisions last season, where they tried to, undercut Piastri, who was in the lead with Lando, and then Lando basically was threatening to refuse to give the position back to Oscar, and McLaren gave themselves a bigger headache than anyone could have ever imagined. Ultimately ended up leading to an Oscar Piastri win, but at the same time, it's going to be very interesting to watch this year when both of the McLarens are in a title fight, and if they both start on the front row, things could get interesting. But guys, there it is, my qualifying top three. I have an Oscar Piastri pole position, a Lando Norris P2, and Max Verstappen rounding out the top three. Let's move on now. Race, podium. The Hungarian Grand Prix, very, very fun, very exciting. A lot of drama last time out, which did not happen due to the direct on-track action, cars racing one another. But it's going to get very interesting to say the least. But at the same time, not exactly the most interesting race we've ever seen on this calendar that F1 has currently put together. So let's go ahead. Let's begin with P3. I'm going with Lewis Hamilton in this one. I think Lewis had a bit of a dreadful weekend last time out in Spa, now heading to Hungary, one of his better tracks on his, under his belt. And I think Lewis always seems to do pretty decently around here when he's not being crashed into or, being impeded in other ways like we've seen in years past. And so I think this could be another one of those weekends where, coming off of a pretty tough weekend in Spa in Belgium, I think we see Lewis take another step forward, potentially getting on the podium for the first time for Ferrari at one of his more impressive tracks for him and his repertoire. So I think it would be a good way for him to kind of bounce back from Spa and get on the podium and take, like I've said a lot, it would carry momentum into the summer break to really try and recover and step forward towards the second half of the season. And I think it starts with a P3 on the podium in Hungary. As we move on now to P2 this time out, and I'm going with Lando Norris in this one. I think this is going to be a case of, if it is a McLaren front row lockout, I think it is going to be who can get out and get out away early, because this is just one of those tracks where it's pretty difficult to overtake. You really need the overspeed, that tire offset, and it could be one of those things where pit stop priority is going to matter a lot, and whoever is first on track, like we saw last time out in Spa, is going to matter a lot in the long run. If Oscar is able to hold off Lando at the beginning from my qualifying predictions, then I think that puts him in a great position, and Lando will do his best, but at the same time, it's going to take a massive amount of overspeed or a large tire delta offset to make up for it. Unfortunately, I just don't know if we see it this time out, just because, especially last year, Oscar looked rapid from the jump. If he's able to do that again, it's going to be hard to catch him. So Lando Norris, P2, and I believe I probably spoiled it a little bit too much, but my winner for the Hungarian Grand Prix is Oscar Piastri. Shocker, I know, right? It's crazy that I would have ranted about the McLarens battling and Lando not coming out on top, just for Oscar to be my pick for the winner. So this is going to be one of those races, I think, where it's going to be, the drama is going to be the start, as we see so often this year and in years past, and I think it's going to be one of those where Oscar, given the free air, is going to take advantage of it. We've seen him with lightning consistency and pretty decent pace and tire saving as well. So it's going to take a strategy overcut or undercut from Lando to try to really put him under pressure. And I think Oscar getting the pit stop priority when your teammate is the one battling you behind, that is going to make the big difference. And so Oscar Piastri is my pick for the winner of the 2025 Hungarian Grand Prix. All right, let's wrap this up. Our one crazy prediction, and this is a prediction I've actually done a handful of times over the years that we've been doing this predictions video for Grand Prix weekends, and I really feel like this could be one of those, because it seems like every time we talk about Hungary, you have to mention a lot of the crazy instances and the crazy races we've seen over the years, and so I think this could be another one of those where, whether it's from the qualifying results or stuff that happens in the Grand Prix itself, but my one crazy prediction this time out is that 7 constructors are represented in the top 10 when the race is over. So I think there's realistically only going to be maybe 3 teams, no, not even maybe 3 teams, there'll be 3 teams who aren't represented in the points, but I think we could see some craziness either in qualifying or in the race itself that lends itself to a mixed up top 10, and I, for one, am going to be all for it. But what do you think? I know this one never seems to hit whenever I do, but Hungary is just giving me the vibes of one of those where something weird is going to happen and we're going to see some crazy results. So what do you think of my one crazy prediction? Let me know down in the comment section below. But there we go, guys. My predictions for the 2025 Hungarian Grand Prix are over. What do you make of my predictions, and what do you think is going to happen this weekend? Let me know down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you guys think is going to happen. And as always, if you made it this far into the video, leave a like rating. It really truly does help me out as we try and grow our small little community. And once again, if you haven't already, subscribe. I would really appreciate it and love to have you join in on the conversations. But guys, that is going to wrap it up for me here. We'll be back when the weekend is all over with to talk about what we saw this weekend, but as we head into the summer break. I, for one, can't wait, as with every F1 weekend on the calendar. So, guys, that'll wrap it up for me here in this one, and I'll see you in the next one.